Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Horror Movie Night Live podcast. Look at this. I'm rocking our own merch. Look at that ghost. He's got a boner. So we are doing our third episode. That looks like 6, but that's actually 2 3s because I'm so excited that we're doing this 3 times. So let me first bring on my regular co-host, Scott.
I'm not regular at all.
He has been rocking this show with me for like 7 or 8 years, and he was gone last week, but he's back. We got Brian.
Brian's like not good. oh, you mean the Zodiac killer? Brian, turn on a fucking light.
No. Darkness.
Look, I want to show you what you look like, dude.
No, he can see it. He's aware. You look like...
Your room's still lit.
Yeah, your room's still lit. Brian looks like the image of a demon face that they flash up in Exorcist for like a millisecond. But no one wants to listen to just the 3 of us talk. We've learned that from looking at the numbers for our podcast. So let's bring...
Thank you,
it was. Yes, it was. So let's bring on our guests, 2 of our favorite people, hosts of one of my absolute favorite podcasts, Joe and Joshua of Fright School. There's Joe. There's Joshua.
Hi, bitches.
Hello.
Hey, girls.
Yes. Can we please start with queer minstrel
Woo!
show?
Yes.
Oh, and Brian's already taken himself out of the equation.
I'm still here. I'm just gonna. I have a dumb watching face, so I'm only gonna pop in if I have something to say.
Okay, now it got fancy as fuck.
There we go. We're bringing it to you.
Wait,
Joe, back.
Is yours also? Yours isn't nearly as fancy. Yours is a disco ball. I don't know. I'm really.
Yeah, mine's a little. Mine's just a rainbow.
I'm still so wait, we've talked about this before we hit record, and I'm still confused. Joe, why is your voice coming through so deeply on this recording?
Well, it's just like Joshua said, when the instinct automatically when you're surrounded by straight men is to just go to a lower octave.
Bring it down.
How straight do you think we are? Because
I mean,
we've hung out.
darn.
I edit your podcast all the time. I thought we were friends.
No, it has nothing to do with you. It's involuntary. It's like breathing.
Like you're breathing the wrong kind of air.
So like if Brian removed Scott and I, and it was just the 2 of you, would it just like snap right back to normal Joe voice?
Yeah, it'd be like, oh my god.
It might.
So there's a lot to talk about. There's a ton of great stuff going on, but first we have to talk about, on our Facebook page, we've been doing this ongoing daily poll where people ranked the 20 best slashers. Now, admittedly, some people got left off on the list. That's my fault, but I thought it was a pretty decent list.
Dude, that was over 2 weeks long. I was at the edge of my fucking seat.
We all needed distractions in life. So let's take a look. I just wanted to take a look to analyze what exactly ended up being the finals in that. So in 20th place was Ben Willis from I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I'm not mad per se, but I think that there was someone else who was way more deserving to be first out on this list.
Guy from Pieces.
Oh, no.
Really?
No. I mean, so what are our thoughts on Ben Willis?
He has a raincoat and a hook. I don't know.
I feel like he looks cool, right? Like,
yeah.
He just
so here's the problem with Joshua. You just made me realize. You know what the problem is with Ben Willis? He carries a hook, but he has no hook.
There we go.
But 19 is where I would have put the worst one, which is Kenny Hampson from Terror Train, which is like. Yeah.
Why did I pick Ben Willis first? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I actually don't think I saw that the dude from Terror Train was on the list. I was like,
Terror Train's rough.
Yeah, well, Fright School boys, you will be happy to know that we are never picking Terror Train for horror movie night because it's so bad. It was, I love seasonal horror. and to Matt's chagrin, I'm always like, hey, Matt, do you want to do like another theme month? And he's like, fuck no, I don't want to do another theme month. And so we're never doing that, but I think we have one more in the chamber. I don't know if there's anything else after NYE 2020, but it's never going to be Terror Train.
We love a theme.
Yeah.
We have themes all the time.
Oh yeah, you do. I mean, you have a theme podcast, so
listen. I mean, I would say that you and the Jersey Ghouls really have the themed episodes on lockdown, and there's no reason for Horror Movie Night to be Thompson on the ground that you guys have so perfectly laid out.
Well.
That's I mean, that's what I tell myself anyway. 18, someone who had a lot of people, or at least Joshua, truly campaigning for his removal right out the gate. Horace Pinker of Shocker, which, like, I have mixed feelings. Shocker's a piece of trash, but I would watch another movie. Bro. Yeah, great theme, great soundtrack, really, and I would watch another movie with Horace. He had interesting powers. There's that Looney Tunes run to.
That's the worst part of that movie. Have you guys seen Shocker?
Is that the Wes Craven one where the guy gets like electrocuted and gets into like the wires and shit? Yeah, I saw that. I mean, I was probably, what year did that come out?
89.
89.
Yeah, so I probably
it
saw
might have been 90, but it was like right before. I think that he did a lot of the same shit in Freddy's Dead, which is very weird. They feel like shitty cousins.
Just shit, the shittiest of cousins. 17, we had Cropsy from The Burning.
I love The Burning.
I've not seen that. And now when I see Cropsy, I always think of that documentary that came out like a few years ago.
Good.
That I like was genuinely disturbed by. Like I was watching that in broad daylight, and Jeffrey came home, and I was so happy he was there because I was really freaked out. It was just so unsettling. So I've not seen the Burning, but that's what I think of when I think of Cropsy, and I'm like, that's kind of awesome. Like he is freaky. This idea of Cropsy,
and it's based on the same urban legend for sure.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm seeing Scott. Someone pointed out that they made a third Shocker called House 3, which accurate.
Wait, is that the horror show?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Okay. Here's a question for you, Matthew. Would you? Yes, you with the guy in the Ghost Boner shirt. Would you watch Shocker or House? Well, that's actually no. It's a great question because you've picked both of them
House
for
3.
the show.
I watch.
You pick House 3. Okay.
100%. It's got a turkey that has a human head on it.
Oh man, you know what else is great about that movie is the fact that there's full frontal nudity for a woman who is obviously not she's over the age of 18, but they imply that she's still in high school. So, that doesn't feel awkward at all.
No, not at the least. So here's one that we can really jump
so
on.
Rare in horror.
Yeah.
Here's
the guys who have probably never seen Amityville. It's About Time. Oh, fucking.
So let's dive into one that we can really analyze with the topic of camp. Number 16, The Night Owl from Stage Fright.
Oh, so good.
Now, Joshua, have you seen Stage Fright or Joe?
No, I've not seen that.
What?
So it's
I guess they have to do
either.
Oh,
yeah, Brian hasn't either.
Brian was going to come in.
Nope. He just wanted to say he hadn't seen it. It's a slasher movie that takes place at a rehearsal for a musical.
Dude, we gotta do it.
We
now.
need that.
86. Yeah. The original is 86.
Yeah, 86. And then there was a remake starring Meatloaf that came out. That was an actual musical. Like they wrote songs for it.
It's a heavy metal musical, and we
it's
did
a heavy
an episode on it. It's not that good. It's like it kind of reminds me of Repo the Genetic Opera.
But I feel like I want to see it.
Yeah,
like I should.
You should do like back to back. The original and the remake. I would listen to Fright School's analyzing which they preferred between the original like Italian slasher and the weird Meatloaf musical version.
My money is on the original slasher because it is way creepier, way gayer. There's a lot of guys in like
tights.
Yeah.
But the remake has what is still one of my favorite moments in any horror film, which is that the killer is playing guitar while he's singing a song about how he's going to murder somebody, and then he lifts up the knife and stabs it through the guitar so he can capo it to do the solo real quick, and then takes the knife out to kill
That
him.
literally is the best part of the movie. That's like, you know how people talk about, supercuts of mediocre horror movies. That's literally the only thing that would be a supercut from the remake of Stage Fright.
So Brian, so at 15 is the one that you said should be the worst there, Scott, which is Dean Foley of the movie Pieces. There's nothing more to say. It's Pieces.
Yeah.
It's Italian.
Hey, so Tony just said Slumber Party Massacre 2. Here's a quick question. Matt, because the Fright School boys have not seen the remake of Stage Fright.
Neither have I.
Well, it says the guy who literally is a ghost. You are Horace Pinker in this episode of Horror Movie Night Live. Slumber Party Massacre 2 versus Horace Pinker. Like Driller Killer and Slumber Party Massacre 2 versus Horace Pinker.
That's not even difficult. That's
I'm sorry, not Horace Pinker. Dude in Slumber Party Massacre 2. Or fuck. Wow.
I know where you're going with this. The answer is still Slumber Party Massacre 2.
Yeah, I mean, I just watched Slumber Party Massacre 2 a couple weeks ago because quarantine is the only time that I can get away with watching every single horror movie I love. And man, that movie still it still holds up. And that is campy as shit. Have you guys done an episode on that yet?
No.
Is that even
Slumber
on
Party
your
Massacre? No.
pipeline?
Not yet.
Keep the list coming.
Slumber Party 2. Slumber Party Massacre 2 is so Fright School.
It is.
So
Okay.
Fright
I
School.
mean, Summer Party Massacre, I've heard of, and I put it on like a list of like movies that people talk about that I should at least know something about. So like it's on that list. But Joshua's the dean of programming, so you know
That's true. Dean,
I will add that. Hey, I'm open. Always looking for stuff.
I
you
know,
But
we've
sometimes
met.
we have that argument sometimes where it's like, oh, maybe we should do this. I'm like, but would horror movie night do it? Like, like I don't
Listen,
want
We can
to.
cross-pollinate. Between
I
you
have no
guys,
problem with
us,
that.
yeah,
And
you
ghouls,
guys,
yeah.
us, and the ghouls. Like, Brian has literally done 2 episodes on the same movie.
I got annoyed with you guys because I was convinced that we had already done Child's Play 3.
And
then-
it was,
No,
it was
that was
you did the
Matt's
Jersey
pick
Ghouls.
like
I'm
so
just going
there's
to rock
nothing
through
wrong
this
with
list.
cross-pollination.
I'm going to rock through the list real quick. So 14, we had The Prowler. 13, which really shocked me how early this one went out, Ghostface from Scream. 12 was Farmer Vincent in Motel Hell. 11, Terry Simmons from Blood Rage. Number 10,
Boo.
number 10, so excited he made the top 10, Dr. Giggles. Number 9, Billy Chapman from Silent Night, Deadly Night. Number 8, Michael Myers from Halloween. Get the fuck out of there, Michael.
Nice poll.
Number 7,
I'm upset
Frank-
about that.
Frank Zito from Maniac. Number 6, really thought my little boy was going to make it to the top 5. Chucky from Child's Play. Number 5, super excited to see that she made it. Angela from Sleepaway Camp, which I believe was the first email I ever sent to Fright School was that I wanted to do the Sleepaway Camp episode with you guys. And then I ended up doing Monster Squad instead.
yes.
True. But we're still open to doing that. We're still saving it because we showed it to a group of people and recorded in real time their reaction to the final moments. So we have that saved. So whenever we do that, we're
Well,
like,
no
ready.
time like the quarantine to knock that one out.
Oh,
Okay, let's do it.
I like that.
I'm down. I'm down.
Yeah.
Number 4, Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Very upsetting to Brian. He
You should
temporarily
have been
quit the
3.
show.
You should have absolutely been 3, in my opinion. I'm with
Yeah.
Brian.
Mhm.
Number 3, Candyman. Number 2, Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th, part 2 through 4 and 6 through 12. And then number 1, Freddy Krueger from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, which, like, obviously, it was always going to be Freddy. Like,
Yeah. Like, I don't want it to be someone that known, but also it deserved to be someone that known at the
Well,
same time.
that's like the big debate that I've been having lately is that I think the next one I'm going to do is remakes. And obviously in the people in the comments, let us know what topics you would want to do. But I think if we do remakes, then we need to exclude The Thing, The Fly, and The Blob because they're
They're
guaranteed
just
to be
gonna.
the top
No. You can leave the blob in. I actually think The Blob is a contender, and it's less known than The Thing. A lot of people know The Thing and The Fly without knowing that they are remakes, but I don't think that as many people outside of like hardcore 80s, or not hardcore, but like more intense 80s horror lovers know that The Blob was remade in 88. But oh man, you know, I want that to be our next poll, and I really want my number 1 slot to be Maniac. I want my number 2 slot to be Evil Dead 2013 because that's, I mean, like, biased poll, guys. Sorry, it's our poll.
See,
I don't know. I would put
Ghosts.
Town That Dreaded Sundown somewhere in there.
I could make top 10, but I honestly don't think that
it won't because I don't think anyone saw it. It was like direct to video, but
I wrote a song about it in Survivor Girl.
Well, there we go.
Enough said.
All right. So we've talked enough about what happens in the horror movie night world. Let's talk about what's going on in the Fright School world. I want to know, what have you guys been doing to survive these quarantine times? Because the episodes have been great. You did a great episode on Cabin in the Woods. And for me personally, I can say that Scott, after last year, has had it with RuPaul's Drag Race. So your podcast has been like my go-to source for RuPaul Drag Race discussions, and I love you for it. And also, we talked a lot yesterday about some issues that I had with the last episode, but let's hear. What's Fright School? Tell us.
Explain the concept for people that might not know, and then explain who you two are.
Joe, you want to go or me? Who wants? You want to
go? I'll go.
Okay.
So Fright School is basically it's a podcast where Joshua, who is a lifelong horror fan, basically shows me films that I've never seen. So in our first season, he created this like 16-week foundational films in American horror, and all of which I'd never seen. I'd never seen up until we started doing this. Never seen any Friday the 13th, any Nightmare, no Halloween, no Scream, nothing. Maybe a couple every now and then, and a couple here and there that I just never really registered. And so we talk about like the cultural significance of each film, much like I see that. That's awesome. We talk about the cultural significance of the films. We talk about the ideas of like the time periods in which they were made and how they're reflections of the anxieties of the time, that cultural anxiety. Joshua, am I missing anything?
No, sounds good.
Okay, good.
That's all. That's it. That's the concept, and we just try each week to have a good time, and because it's like when sometimes I worry because we try to approach it academically, and we have these conversations about horror, and I'm always afraid of sapping out like the fun, So it's trying to keep that balance,
I think that your show does a really great job with that balance, especially like I still. Genuinely, I think that the first season of Fright School, like the first group of like, these are the 12 movies in like a textbook that we looked up of the movies that you need to watch to be a horror fan. I would literally say that is, to me, one of the best first seasons of a horror podcast.
It hooked me.
Yeah.
And this is how much it hooked me.
Thank you.
I didn't want to slog through you guys like gushing over American Horror Story because I hate that show, the series rather, but I did it because I loved your concept so much, and this is before I even knew you guys, and now I love everything about you. So that's how good season 1 was that like I put up with so much bullshit. It's basically like a podcast version of Matt Kelly that I'm not involved with.
But yeah, like I'm not gonna lie, like I would recommend anyone listen to the first like 50 episodes of Horror Movie Night. I'd be like, I don't know, jump in at like 125, 150 when like Brian gets like used to talking into a microphone.
So actually, just go back.
We're like 300 episodes in, and I'm not used to talking into a microphone. So don't look for that episode.
Yeah, literally, I was about to say like go back a month and then start, and that's where Brian really gets funny.
And to answer the torrent question, don't torrent horror movies. That would be a bad thing because the industry needs the money. But there is Shudder and Amazon Prime and Tubi and like hundreds of other great streaming sites that have pretty much everything we talk about, unless it was picked by me. I
Yes,
don't.
you make it difficult for Brian and I. So the way that we planned out 2020 was literally like Brian and I saying we're only going to pick movies that we can either watch streaming or literally we're only going to watch movies that are streaming, like either on Shudder, Amazon, or Netflix. We really rarely use Tubi, but Tubi is a great service as well. But really, Brian and I switch between Shudder and Netflix. I sometimes will go to Hulu. And then Matt comes in with, oh, let's watch Jaws 3. You know how hard it was for me to find a copy of Jaws fucking 3? I had to find some creepy ass sketchy places to download that. But there is actually a Google Doc that I made with it was every single episode from episode 1 to, I want to say 235 or something like that. Like it was pretty updated about a month ago. I should probably go back and update it, but it has little X's by every single movie's current streaming stuff, and you can find almost every single thing that we've discussed on this show streaming somewhere as of a month ago. And most of them are on multiple services, things like that. So I will reshare that after this live is done. And well, I actually might wait till tomorrow sometime because my wife Megan had a great suggestion of having a link to every single episode in that Google Doc. So I think I might do that and then reshare it with everything up to episode. What are we on, 248 now? Is that what this week was, Matt?
Yeah, so at the end of the episode, we'll tell you what we're talking about in 249, and it fits in with the theme of camp. But before we get into that discussion topic, I do want to ask, so obviously Joshua has been the hardcore horror fan. Now, Joe, I feel like I've heard you talk about this on the show before. Do you consider yourself a horror fan? And don't give me your on-air answer of, well, I can't be a horror fan because then it ruins what the show's about with me becoming a horror fan. Like, it's been 4 or 5 episodes. Are you a horror fan now?
I mean, yeah, I guess I would say I'm a horror fan, but I feel like it's so interesting because like when we go to these cons, when we talk to other people who are horror fans, I can see like where I fit in the specific like umbrella of the sub fandoms, right? So it's like, I'm a horror fan that like likes all of the movies that are like films capital F, right? So, but like at the same time, like I also like the horror comedies a lot. I also like the musicals and things. So I feel like yes, overall I am a fan. But it's interesting when like I have conversations with people and they ask me like, oh, have you seen this film or this film or this film? And then we talk about like what it means to them. And it's like, okay, it means something different to me because I also it wasn't given to me. Like it wasn't like I didn't grow up with it. It was something I came to very late, and it doesn't have the same like connections, that I don't have the same like familiarity as maybe like Joshua does when people talk to him about like, you know, anything from his childhood. So it's interesting. But I mean, the short answer is yes, I definitely would consider myself a fan of horror. And I do get really excited when I see cool trailers out there or movies that are like those indie movies that are sometimes on streaming platforms. And I watch trailers and I just start sending things to Joshua. So like 1BR, has anyone seen the trailer for 1BR? It's like a girl who moves into a 1-bedroom apartment in LA, but like the apartment complex has some like they're all sinister residents trying to kill her or something like that. I don't know.
Where is this? Is this streaming somewhere or?
I believe it's streaming. I know it's up for purchase on Apple, but it's probably elsewhere too.
I'll check Prime.
And then I saw that there was one that was like not officially classified as horror. It was more thriller, but it's called Swallow, where it's like
Matt interviewed the writer, right?
Yeah, I interviewed the director on the show.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it's just like I start looking for them like, ooh, this looks really cool. Ooh, this looks really cool. And then there are things where I'm like, no, definitely not doing that one. So I feel like I definitely would consider myself a fan, but of like very specific things.
So I have a question for both of you boys. it's two pronged, and I want Joe to answer first, and then Joshua. So yes. So what's your favorite movie that you've watched within the last 2 semesters of Fright School? And then what movie are you most excited about to watch? It doesn't have to be for Fright School, but it has to be like, horror adjacent.
Jennifer's Body.
Nice choice.
Jennifer's Body. Jennifer's Body, because it was such its like time period, and also like I have massive lifelong crush on Adam Brody, and he plays just bro. Like it's like and he's just like the perfect like that his like douchiness is just so like precise and dialed in, but it still just endears me to him even more. And Scott, so Jennifer's Body would be one. And then as far as one that I'm looking forward to covering, if I'm thinking about like newer films, I definitely can't wait to watch the remake of Candyman. Specifically because we have like the perfect, like the guest who we had on when we covered the original Candyman. I want him to come back on to talk about the remake of Candyman, and just to see how we can enrich that conversation even more. So yeah, those would be my answers. What about you, Joshua?
Well, you took my Candyman answer, because definitely I'm very much looking forward. I'm very sad that this pseudo-apocalypse has delayed the release of that. It's a bummer. So for the last, I really enjoyed our talk about Rift. And we had the director on, Erlinger Terratzen, and we talked about like queer relationships and kind of the strange adolescence that we have, and the things that kind of happen to us that are very normalized in queer culture. That was a great conversation, and I really, really love that film. It's an Icelandic horror film, Rift, Rokur or something is the original title. So yeah, definitely looking forward to Candyman. And then I really can't wait to do Hellraiser with Joe. He's been dragging his
original.
The original.
Yeah.
Just because
wait, Joe, you've never seen Hellraiser?
He has not.
Oh, girl,
he keeps saying no.
I've been avoiding Hellraiser like the plague, because I remember growing up, there was like this video store that was in a strip mall right across from like where I got my haircut, and they had a poster of Hellraiser in like the window for years. And I was like, why? I don't know why they have this one poster for this movie many years after it's been in theaters. But I remember it just freaking the fuck out of me every single time. And I'm just like, I can't do it. And so Joshua is just like, we're going to do it. We have to do it. I mean, we did Arachnophobia, which like I also have a fear of spiders. So, I feel like, okay, well, if I can do Arachnophobia, I can definitely do Hellraiser. But I mean, probably will like it better than Arachnophobia. But
I think you will. That's been kind of the thing. It's like, I know we're gonna have an awesome conversation. I know it'll lead to a really good episode. But yeah, it's just like the imagery of it freaks him out, and I don't try to push. It's like if something's really like, I don't know, that's kind of might be too horrifying for me. I don't try to push Joe too much. Even though that's kind of the joke.
I think you. What was that? Oh, it was just 2-3 months ago. And what did you put? Oh, I can't remember. You pushed him so hard on something, and I can't remember what it was. But
taking a look at their back catalog real quick.
It was literally like, I remember they were. I don't know if Joe posted it or Fright School posted it, but it was Joe like, watching through his eyes.
Inside was really hard.
Inside was.
I think it was Inside.
Yeah. And there is definitely times where it's like the conversation, talking about, women in horror and Christmas horror. And, it's like, sometimes it's like, come on, man. Like, it's so good. And we had such a fun conversation. It's a mix. I wouldn't show him Martyrs. I'd like to, especially given the Jersey Ghouls comment on Martyrs was fantastic. I know, but that's why. So I'm like,
There's like a short list of films that like Joshua has explicitly said, I don't think I'll ever show you this.
Some stuff is unnecessary.
Yeah, it's like this is unnecessary.
Serbian film.
Cannibal Holocaust, I think, is on that one as well. But Joshua, so what's funny about Inside, that was the first film when we had been doing this podcast that Joshua was like, if you want to look away, like 5 minutes, like a couple seconds before this one scene, is like, if you want to look away, you can. Like, and I'm like, oh, what the hell's about to happen? And two more comments. Going back to what Joshua said about Rift was the first film that I remember Joshua saying that he was like very much on the edge of his seat. He had no idea what was going to happen next. And I was like, oh, wow, he's having such a visceral reaction to this film in a way that I had never seen before. So that was really interesting. Again, this was in the before time when we could like sit on his couch and, just be together less than 6 feet apart. And in the comments, to Tony's comment about watch Nightbreed. Nightbreed was the second horror film that Joshua ever showed me. The very first one was Alien. This was before the podcast. First one was Alien. The second one was Nightbreed. And I was just like, okay, well, if I can take this, then I can, all of the other craziness from the 80s I could take too.
So I've got a question. So first of all, I want to say that with Hellraiser, Brian and I had a uncle, which we've talked about before, who had figurines of all the Hellraiser Cenobites. So I was always
Jesus wept.
Yeah, I was always freaked out about them just because of that. But also, like, the VHS for Hellraiser had some of the goriest shit on the back that I had ever seen on like an actual VHS that I could pick up and look at as a child. So that it was a long time before I was ready to watch Hellraiser. Even when I got like hardcore into horror, I think I was like, I may have been like early college when I finally watched Hellraiser for the first time.
That was Dead Alive for me. The part where the priest is getting his chest or his rib cage ripped out really fucked me up.
Yeah,
I didn't watch it until I was in college.
Yeah, just right there on the back of the box. Like, it was crazy the shit that you could put on the back of a VHS box that was in a Blockbuster. So Josh,
that actually, sorry,
ahead.
real quick. That makes me think of. So you guys just recently did an episode on Strangeland.
Fucking strange.
I know. I'm sorry.
We know it's your pick, Brian.
But it was funny because we were talking about it, and it's like I think that I suffer from the same like Mandela effect that I always think it was better than it was. Just because of like it's a lot of style over substance, but the movie art, like on the VHS box, like I remember us going to the movie gallery, the hometown, movie rental place, and my mom, we were all together. My mom's like, "Oh, look, this girl, her lips are like stitched together. Let's rent this."
Why do you have it on DVD? That is one of 100 DVDs of Strangeland. Literally, they made 100 of those.
Yeah, so just
and they're still worth $1.
Yeah,
I felt really
like
stupid.
A different experience of like us going. And I remember being, because that movie came out in what, 98?
98?
I mean,
Right?
98, 99.
So I
one of those two.
would have been 13 or 14, and and that's the thing. We're looking for the artwork that's like horrifying, like, oh, lip stitched together. This is the one.
Well, that's so that
my mother.
that bleeds perfectly into the question that I was going to ask you, which was like, obviously we know pretty well Joe's journey into being a horror fan. With you, do you remember, was there like a specific movie that when you saw it, it was like that aha, like I am a horror fan? Because
anybody's ever turned this question on me.
Yeah. Well, because I think for me, like, there's plenty of horror movies. When we go through like certain movies, I realized that there was a ton of horror movies that I watched before Scream, but like I never considered myself a horror movie fan until I watched Scream. Like, prior to that, it was like, oh, I dip my toe here and there. I'd watch like Alligator, or I'd watch like whatever like schlock was on USA in October. But like Scream was where I was like, no, I want to digest everything that this genre has to offer me.
I wish I had like a really solid answer, because for me, like horror in my family growing up, I mean, it was so much. It's like people are like, they're fans of a certain football team, and so your kids are fans of it and their kids are fans of it, or you just have the knowledge that like you're going to grow up and be a doctor or a lawyer, because being a horror fan is the same thing as But it was just like, it was always just in our house, we watched horror films. Like you were a fan, you liked horror. All of us did, I do remember when I saw The Exorcist when I was very young, and then I got a hold of the book and read it. That was really early too. I feel like that kind of gothic, big, existential like type of horror, which is still kind of my favorite, brand of horror, that probably really solidified it. But I was reading Stephen King very early at like 7 and 8. My mom had given me books, and I'd learned to read, and so it's like it's just hard to really pinpoint. Definitely A Nightmare on Elm Street came out the year I was born, and so Freddy was always in the house. There was never a world before Freddy. But I don't really have a solid answer. It was just a known thing, But then once I got older, I guess in high school and all that, I really started to wear it more as a badge of honor, more of like kind of wrapping myself in that sort of voluntary weirdness of horror and gothiness.
So someone who watches almost all of our live streams is a good friend of mine and has done pretty much every logo for every podcast I've ever done. Last time we went to one of her questions, it led to a guest cutting off a Funko Pop head. But she actually asked a really good question that I do want to dissect before we dive into the discussion of camp. Does anyone else feel like sometimes the horror community can get a little gatekeepy, though?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's the crux of both of our podcasts. Is like, I know for a fact, Fright School's whole conceit is like, let me educate instead of being like, no, you don't get this secret knowledge. And for a horror movie night, we're like, we don't give a shit about good horror, and we don't give a shit about really bad horror. We're just like, what's fun? What can we have fun with? And I think that's so much of like gatekeeping for any interest or community is so much about like, it's not about fun, it's about status. And for us, we're like, we're not going to watch Salo. We're not going to watch, Feast. We're not going to watch a Serbian film, all that stuff, Martyrs, all that like super hardcore, like let's push the envelope about what can be a movie that people can watch and what is like super, super graphic, because really what we're doing is we're escaping the reality, like the horrors of reality with the horrors of unreality. And I think that leads our two podcasts in particular to really, I don't know, be not gatekeepy, because like we don't give a shit about, we're just trying to have fun, at least horror movie night. You guys are trying to educate.
Well, and I think that like a big thing for me came from when I was in LA doing work for Geekscape. I remember us trying to come up with a slogan for what we thought Geekscape should be. And the one slogan that we kicked around for a really long time, but it always stuck with me, was it's okay to like things. Because we just thought we just thought that so much internet journalism had turned into just like, oh, you like that? Here's all the reasons why you're wrong. And it was like, sometimes it's what? If people like Twilight, fucking let them like Twilight. You don't have to like Twilight.
Did Fright School dudes, did you see Underwater in January?
No.
Underwater?
Okay. Underwater. It's got Kristen Stewart in it. And I took so much fucking flack about liking that movie because everybody's like, Kristen Stewart's a terrible actress, blah, blah, blah. And even like my best friend Mario is like, she sucks. I'm like, dude, are you basing that on reality, or are you just basing that on the fact that she was in Twilight and made a fuck ton of money? And nobody has an answer. Everybody's just got this like cultural conceit that if you were in Twilight, and Robert Pattinson, dude,
I was gonna say,
amazing.
There's still so many people that only want to refer to him as a sparkly vampire, and it's like, fuck that, dude. Dude
made so much money that he can do whatever he wants now.
Yeah, and that's
I want that life.
Yeah, like I think
and he's fucking creepy mermaids in black and white. I mean, come on, it's amazing.
And that's the thing, like how many I absolutely love that we live in a society and in a world right now where like all of the people that 10 years ago were the stars of like the biggest tween franchises are just making fucking insane movies, because you've got Robert Pattinson, Daniel Radcliffe, and Elijah Wood just doing whatever the fuck they want, and
They
it's
got
awesome.
fucking money. It's amazing.
No, totally. I think that, the gatekeeping thing, I mean, it's always a struggle because obviously, like with our show, I try to keep the balance because it's not that there's anything better or worse about the films that we discuss, but it is tough because it's like, we do want to have this, like, larger conversation about horror and about cultural anxiety and about why we watch horror films. And so sometimes, like, I feel like, okay, are we being elitist? Are we being, because it's like, I want to be careful and think about who made the movies, why they made the movies. So I don't know. I feel like we definitely can venture into that territory sometimes, but it's not coming from a place of like, we're the cool kids and want to keep people out. Like you're saying, Scott, we definitely, we are trying to spread this information and in talking to people, and that, when we meet people, and Joe's had this experience, oh, I hate horror films. Do you really? And you start asking them, and oh yeah, I love Silence of the Lambs. Okay, well, and that's not a horror film, or like they have these ideas about what is and isn't horror, like Martyrs. That's clearly a horror film, whereas something like, a little bit more not ripping people's skin off isn't a horror film. So I mean, we have that.
I had a friend who ran a comic book shop, and he used to say that he hated when people said, "Oh, I don't like comic books." Because in his mind, he goes, what they meant is, I don't like superhero comics. You can't shut your brain to this entire world of genres and everything. And I feel like horror is very much the same. Like horror, out of all of the film genres, I really believe has such a deep variety of subgenres. It's like, okay, you might not be into slashers and like horror movies, but you might enjoy a witchcraft movie. You might enjoy like an Interview with a Vampire that's like a timepiece vampire film. Like there's so many facets to just wipe out that entire genre is insane. But I think what you guys do and what Jersey Ghouls do that is so important, and like at the end of the day, horror movie night is three white dudes in their 30s just making fun of movies, and like,
in a loving way,
in a very loving way,
yes,
but we have a good time. But like, one of the things that made me immediately cling to your guys' show and the Jersey Ghoul show and want to support them is because I do think that both of your shows represent two voices in the horror community that get stamped out constantly. And I know you guys recently did an episode on Scream Queen, the documentary about Mark Patton. And like, when I got to meet him in September at Fantastic Fest, he even, we were talking a little bit and we asked about that. And he said, there's the guys who will come up to you and they want to shake your hand, but then you offer a hug and then they kind of like very unwillingly just go in for it because they don't want to be rude, but you can tell that's like, oh, I don't want to hug a man. And it's like,
who doesn't want hugs from everybody?
I was gonna say, we're the huggiest fucking podcast in the world.
Yeah, everyone's getting a fucking hug.
Yeah.
Down with handshakes. Yeah, disgusting.
Regarding the gatekeeper thing, so in the last 3 years, I've gotten more comfortable in my non-podcasting life, telling people that I do love horror and I'm a fan and talking to people about that. So I feel like it's interesting because like there are people who I would have never thought in a million years that are horror fans, including like coworkers at my day job, who are just like, every time a new film comes out, we ask if you've seen it, and so it connects us. And so I try to look for those ways that horror connects as opposed to keeps people out. And when we go to cons and when I talk to really close friends about, because like, besides like Joshua and the people that and like all of the friends that I know through Joshua and that are in our little podcasting circle, like none of my like other friends are really horror fans. And it always surprises me when people want to go see films that, are, capital H horror. But my goal is always to try to get them to at least watch one and to like realize that it actually, I think people just can't get over that name in the genre, or maybe they were traumatized by the book and the Page Master and just, I think that's all horror is. But because that's where I came from with it. I'm like, okay, well, but then when you think about it in terms of like, okay, what is this saying about the society that we live in now? What is this saying about this, and how we can have those kinds of conversations? And it's like, okay, so it's not just, it's fantastic, and it's, you know, it turns the dial up to 11. It's not just about, you know, someone killing someone for no apparent reason. It's about, you know, what does it Joshua say? What do we say about French extremity? It's like, you know, blah blah blah, and then, you know, anti-Muslim sentiment in France, like yeah, like, something about that, and something about nuclear war and anti-Muslim sentiment. So, but again, like my goal is always to try to like bring people in and say, okay, well, at least watch one thing. I think I've had some relative success, and I'm still trying to get Joshua to like do like Fright School like 2.0, where we get like someone, where we go through that journey with someone who's never done it before, and like, you know, show them stuff at a time. And it's funny because like my special man friend that I'm currently dating right now, he's not like a horror fan. And so like when he comes over and we watch things, I'm just kind of like, I hope you're okay. Like, I hope you're okay, because you didn't take Fright School 1 through 16. So now you're going into like, you know, advanced.
You're jumping
credit.
you're jumping into one of those 500 classes, and
exactly. It's just like, you know, just get ready. I mean, it's not like we showed him like dumplings right away or anything, but
that seems so tame. Like that's what's so fucked up about my life, is that I've been watching horror for so long. I'm like, dumplings, that seems tame. You know, it's not martyrs. I'm still like, no, but dumplings, I'm like, sure, baby eating. What's the big deal?
Yeah.
I think that,
go ahead.
Sorry. No, I'm just gonna say, I just, you know, sharing the love back. I think what's amazing about your show is there's a nostalgia in what you do that I do think might be gone. I mean, you know, there was something when you like listening to you guys, especially listen to movies that like I have seen, and I have clear memories of going with my family to the video store and looking at all the rows and rows of VHS tapes and picking the, you know, 3 or 4 of them out and knowing we're going to watch all of these terrible horror films, you know, you know, or not, you know, all over the place, and like having that experience, or inviting friends over or cousins over and getting those VHS tapes and just like having a good time and eating pizza and being, you know, young and new to these, you know, conversations. And so it's like, I feel like that's gone, you know, like we can do that with Netflix, of course, but 5 minutes, you don't like it, you change it, you know, you're not with it.
We've talked about that too, because when you would rent the videos from Blockbuster, it didn't matter how shitty it was. You're like, I paid money for this. Yeah. I am finishing.
I spent $1. I am not stopping this movie.
Yeah. Although especially when you grow up poor. Grow up poor. It's like, we are finishing this. Like, sit back down.
This is entertainment, people.
But I appreciate you saying that, because that's kind of what I've always tried to sell the show as, is like, this is you going back to being a kid, having a sleepover where you just rented a shit ton of movies from the video store and you're just watching them. And like, no matter how bad they are, you're going to walk away and be like, yeah, but that one scene was really badass, guys, right? Like, it was worth us watching the whole thing. But yeah, and I think that's why we try to mostly stay away from movies that came out before the video stores went away. Like, we'll do them occasionally, but our bread and butter is like what would have been on the shops at the mom and pop's video store circa 2000. Like,
yeah, you might get some good blood and gore. You might see some naked people, you know.
We're always about the naked people.
Or you get some trash that was shot on like their parents' home camera, but they got a gnarly cover that has nothing to do with the actual movie.
But see, that doesn't happen on Horror Movie Night, because, I mean, at least from, the 2 of the 3 hosts of Horror Movie Night are going to be pre-screening things that they may or may not remember. Brian, not so much.
Matt, oh, you're talking to me?
I already pre-screen everything, and that's why my episodes are always perfect.
Are they, though? Or is that because you edit them to make yourself sound funnier?
No. I just mean that
who has the editing power?
We get good discussions out of the crap that I pick, because I usually am like, okay, there's enough weirdness in this that we should be golden.
I actually can't remember the last episode that was difficult. Like
I'll give a sneak peek. It was something Brian picked. It was a little Italian.
Oh yeah,
the vampires.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good movie.
No, it wasn't. You said so
No,
yourself.
it wasn't a very good movie.
I don't know why Brian's trying to like defend himself.
Yeah.
That was a VHS pick though. That was something that I rented
Yeah.
from Blockbuster. I just didn't remember it.
No, you had never seen it before, and we found it
No.
on video, and
I had rented it, but I guess I rented maybe it was West Coast because I rented the non-dubbed version, and I was like, "This is in a different language."
Yeah, so you never saw it in English, but
because I was like, "I'm 16, I can't read." So then I turned it off, and when I was 29,
Reading's
you guys were
overrated.
like, "Yeah, you don't have to read." So
You
I
just
watched
read
it.
The Raven beautifully, though.
I sent like the weirdest like compliment sandwich to Brian. Oh, to Matt and Brian the other day after Brian posted that, or after Matt posted because Brian sent it to me. He was like, "I'm gonna do this thing." Just kidding, I already did. Now post it. So I was like, Brian, how did I say it? I was like, I would absolutely fall asleep to Brian reading, Edgar Allan Poe on the reg. And I was like, that's a compliment, actually. Like, I need things to calm down. I love the Headspace app because there are sleep casts on it, and they help me relax and fall asleep during a very, very tumultuous time in the world. And I would love more of Brian reading, stumbling sometimes, but it's very endearing.
How much is the Headspace app?
it's like
I think it's
$50 a year.
$49 a year. It's
$48 a year. Brian Reads app. Save yourself $1.
$48. I love it.
People
but I
can
wanted
email hmnpodcast@gmail.com the short stories that you want Brian to read, and we will get some more
I'm
Brian.
gonna fuck him up by I'm gonna like send him some Lovecraft, which is so hard to read. So hard.
Yes.
I'll do my best, and my only rule is one take. That's it.
Right.
One take,
we want the
and
one
it's
thing.
done.
So two things I want to say. One is a comment about reading, and the second is I want to respond to something that somebody said in the comments. So the first thing is about reading. Had my first like lunch and learn kind of meeting with new bosses and coworkers via like a WebEx or whatever last week, and they were like, everybody explain yourselves, explain who you are. And I was like, oh, I love, I never mention my podcast. I never mention my bands. That's just rule number one of being in corporate America. So I said, I love to cook and I love horror movies. And they were like, and my boss's boss was like, it's weird that you didn't say that you love to read books because, you've got all these books behind you. Because I was at my actual desk over there. And I was like, I do enjoy reading books, but I haven't read anything good in the last calendar year. So, I mean, there's that. But the other thing I wanted to say was Tony said, where is it? What was the last thing you guys have seen that gave you chills? And it's hard. I don't know what the last thing is, but I wanted to ask the other guys.
The Invisible Man. Absolutely.
With Elizabeth Moss?
Yeah, with Elizabeth. That opening 10 minutes, I was on the edge. Okay. Well, when you see it, I'd be interested to hear what you say because horror is a visceral experience. Like there's the opening 10 minutes of that film are just like I mean, I was breathing so hard. Has anybody else, have you seen it, Matt?
I saw
Which
it.
one?
Okay, Brian.
Invisible Man.
Yeah, no, the first 10 minutes is horrifying.
It was insane.
Yeah.
I was just on the edge of my seat, like couldn't breathe. It was so well done. So
Jake screamed in the movie theater.
Well, I think that this might just be me, but like for the last couple months, I was going to the movies 2-3 days a week to see horror movies after work. And a lot of the time it was only me in the theater. And there is something to be said about when you're like completely alone in a big, dark, empty theater, you could be watching. Yeah, like you could be watching The Fucking Turning, which is the worst movie I've seen this year. But you're like I get on edge sometimes, even just because for me, like I know that I'm going to jump at the sound of a loud noise. Like I just know that it's going to happen. And so like I'll be watching a movie like The Turning and I'm like, something's going to happen. They're going to cut to some weird shit like someone's fingernail just like snapping off as it hits a piece of wood, and there's going to be a loud bang, and I'm going to jump, and I'm going to feel like an idiot because there's only one other person in this theater, and they're in the perfect angle to see me jump, and they're going to tell their friends, yeah, some jerk in the theater just jumped at this stupid movie. Like, I get stressed out about that. But Tony mentioned A Quiet Place, and that definitely, like, seeing that in the theater when it was perfectly silent the whole time, like, I was very much like.
Did you have the experience where people were like, when it was quiet, there was like not a sound, it was like a pin could drop, and then when there was a little bit of like sound, people would be like, because I had just gotten over a cold, and I was one of those people.
But let's jump in. It's almost 9 o'clock, which this is great. We've been having a good back and forth, but we haven't talked about camp at all. So tell us a little bit about camp, since that's the thing that we promised would be a little bit of the discussion, because I feel like it encapsulates so many things. And it's one of those things where I know camp when I see it.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's indefinable. Like,
yeah, but I can't describe it to someone.
Joshua, do you have the Sontag behind you somewhere? The notes on camp.
Notes on camp. I do not. I should. Oh, sorry. 1 second. I'm getting more wine. By the way, I'm drinking out of my Glampire glass.
Hey, girl.
That was a gift from Scott. Thank you.
I think I found that at like TJ Maxx, and I was like, my girls need it.
And I freaking love stemless wine glasses. Jeffrey hates them, so we don't have any. So I was like, this is so awesome.
I can only use stemless wine glasses because I am the clumsiest motherfucker that you've ever met. Literally, I was at the test kitchen today, and I was like, I just put the littlest pressure on a knife, a brand new knife, and I was like, oh, it cut me. I'm a fucking moron. I dropped Megan's coffee the other day. I ran into the side of the garage. Jesus Christ. I don't know how I haven't murdered
Sorry,
myself.
Matt. We will talk about camp eventually.
No, it's fine. I mean, listen, let's,
but anyway.
first and foremost, let's just address it, because we're never going to do an episode on it. We're never going to address it again. Who's your favorite for Drag Race, since the finale's in 2 weeks?
Right now?
Yeah.
Crystal Method.
Okay. I'm going Gigi. Gigi good for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it was Gigi, but honestly, Jada Essence Hall is starting to win me over. Jada Essence Hall.
Right before the final episode, you're like, you know what? You're starting to win me over.
Look over there. Yeah.
Well, because this whole season has been like, most of the season's been like, don't even acknowledge that this particular queen is even here.
Yeah,
which has been really weird, but that's fine.
Which again is so unfortunate, because Scott, you were saying that you've kind of dropped out. You haven't been.
I haven't watched the last 2 seasons. I just can't. Which is actually too much bullshit for me.
This has been such like a return to like really good. Like, I mean, for for several years, I was kind of the same way. I feel like I've been being dragged to. Oh my God, that was I've been being forced to watch Drag Race, just because it's like it's our duty,
It's also like habit, right?
Yeah. But it's fun with a group of people and all of that kind of thing. But it's just like, there's been so much drama and just so much like, God, these aren't even talented queens. Like, you could just tell right from like the last couple seasons, you saw the top 5 a mile away. Oh my gosh, we just have to slog to get to it. This year, I think it's been really a nice return to form. They found some really incredible queens and really cool people, like outside of it, just they're outside of one.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I was saying to you earlier. Yeah, I told you yesterday, like, this was the first season where it just felt like everybody got along backstage, so they didn't have any way to get them to fight with each other.
Yeah.
So just like
totally
talented people doing talented things for 12 episodes. And I was like, this is great. This is charming. This is nice. Like, but yeah, Sherry Pie, who in any other circumstance would be the person I'd be gunning to see win.
Oh, yeah.
But like before the season even starts,
it's been very tough.
Yeah, it's like before the season even starts, it's like, hey, so allegations came out that she's been catfishing so many people in New York for years and is a terrible, terrible predator of human beings. So
and then admitted it and released her own statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so not even like where was the fixers on that, Yeah.
Well, and it's like, so weird seeing the edits. Like, you can watch, like, Scott, they literally just would edit her out of runways. They would edit her out of talent.
Oh, she's the one that you mentioned, like, at the beginning, or it was like a month ago or something like that. You were like, there's this one person on Drag Race this season that she doesn't even exist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like they just try to
Yeah.
edit around it, and she's one.
But she's killing it.
Yeah, she's like everything that I look for in a drag queen. Like she just does like comedic old like weird drag. Like she just is very good at what she does. Just is unfortunately a terrible person behind the scenes, and like what has been kind of cool is how she'll win. Like she'll win certain rounds, like certain maxi challenges and stuff like that. And at the end of the episode, it will just tell you like the $5,000 we were supposed to go to Sherry Pie, we've decided to donate to this charity. Like they just wouldn't. They completely alienated. Like cut her out, didn't show her unless she was like focal to like who won that round, and like she made it to the final four, but is not welcome to perform in the finale, and like not welcome to the reunion or anything.
Because they film everything a year in advance, so
course,
like this is nothing that they could have foreseen. What I will say about Sherry Pie is the fact that like I think editing her out actually really gave us meaning the audience the chance to look at like to focus the narrative on other people, where Sherry Pie may have taken up a lot of space in like our consciousness and what the editors and the producers might have put forth. And so like we had the chance to like really focus in on like a Crystal Method, on a Widow Von Du and that sort of thing. And and Sherry Pie is included in what I'm about to say next, is that this was the first season in a long time where I was genuinely surprised by how people did and how the different queens did in their performances. Like I usually in the last couple of seasons, it's been like, oh, you obviously are the Instagram look queen who doesn't know that she needs to be funny and takes us too seriously. When like this season, it's constantly been like, oh, I completely mischaracterize you. And by the end of it, you are rooting for people who like when the season started, I'd never root for. So
yeah, Gigi,
I really,
nothing else,
Gigi Good for sure.
If nothing else, just watch Gigi Good's performance in the Snatch Game, which was like literally when she walked out, you're like you said, Joe, I 100% was like, okay, great. Just another Instagram drag queen that's super gorgeous and has no other things to back it up. And then did the impossible of being like, I'm going to do Snatch Game as a robot. And RuPaul being like, I don't think I can bounce back and forth with a robot. I really don't think you should do it. And she's like, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And it stole the show.
Yeah, it was great.
It was the best physical performance I've ever seen. Like her struggling to pick up her cards because she doesn't have like good fingers to grab things, and like just doing these weird head movements while she's just sitting there.
I think you sold me on this season.
Dude, it's great. Sherry Pie also, I will say Sherry Pie, for all the negatives, the Katharine Hepburn Snatch Game bit.
It was amazing.
So for her Snatch Game, she just had scribbles written across every single card. And when they would go to her, she would hold up the card and just look at it confused for a few seconds and then just say whatever the celebrity had said the answer was. Like,
yeah, it was brilliant. I mean, nobody had ever done that before. I'm like, what a great idea. Like, oh, sure, it's exactly what they said. I mean, it was great. It's so frustrating.
To Logan's comment about being a pretty queen for a straight man, you must watch RuPaul's Drag Race Secret Celebrity, and you can watch several straight men kill it in drag.
That is true.
Which, like, no one really, just like Untucked, no one really needs to watch Secret Celebrity. Plus, if you're like Joshua, you probably won't know like more than half of the celebrities that are on it. But
celebrities.
Yeah,
celebrity.
The veritable who's that?
I was really excited when they did the celebrity edition of Drag Race this year, because it meant that I could shut off my TV 30 minutes earlier than I usually do. It's like, oh, it's not a 2-hour episode anymore. It's just 90 minutes. Boom. So Drag Race would fall into camp, I would say, but also like you've got Elvira back there behind you. Like, let's talk a little bit about your queen.
I love it. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Elvira, and I've talked about this before, especially as a queer person. Not only a queer person, but then also on top of it, like dressing in all black and kind of being that kid in high school. There was just something, to kind of imbue oneself with like that Elvira energy of like, when she gets out of the car and, Chastity Pariah walks up and oh, she's just so horrified at her. And, she's just like, so like, yeah, I'm fucking awesome. Like, I'm sexy as shit in this dress. I'm wearing all black. I'm freaky. There was just so much empowerment in that, so it's like I have this like trifecta of women, when I was a teenager that like, helped me become, this today, which is like Madonna, Melissa Etheridge, Elvira, it's like,
so I would ask trifecta.
Yeah. So it's like, I definitely, Elvira, I just remember, and then of course the Craft came along and that whole, like, we are the weirdos, mister, that quote, it's like, yes, like we are the weirdos, like, fuck you. So, and I just feel that really resonates from that like Elvira energy. So, and yeah, she's a total drag queen, like Pee Wee Herman, it's like this awesome, intense character that's just beyond, critique, to a certain extent, or like that negative attention. It's like, screw you. I didn't invite you to my party anyways. It's like, I don't know. I could go on and on about my love of Elvira.
Joshua, do you want to address Vampira from Logan because of that documentary that I watched with you a little bit?
Of course. I mean, I love a lot of the imagery of Vampira, of course, and her story, and Mila Nurmi's like whole thing about it. And, I feel she got, such a raw end of the deal. But unfortunately, like, nothing, so little exists from the Vampira show that I didn't grow up. It took being a fan of Elvira and then later on hearing about Vampira to know that she even existed.
I was gonna say, I feel like most of us only really know Vampira because of the movie Ed Wood. Like, if that movie didn't exist, it wouldn't even be on most of our radars.
Yeah, I think so. But I now it's like I do try to do my best. Like, I buy a lot of Vampira merch. I know that she's gone, but I do, try to support the estate. They have a big book coming out soon that's going to be a whole like visual diary of Vampira that looks beautiful. I can't wait to get that. I've got t-shirts, I've got her glasses. So it's like I love the Vampira imagery, and that Elvira does owe a lot to that. But lots of horror hosts, have come after Vampira and owe a little bit of their career to her, I think.
I mean, there's always, it's
not enough exists.
A lot of the time, the first people to do something are the first ones to be forgotten too, which sucks.
Absolutely. And that was a big thing that Vampira said, and again, but she still wasn't like, I mean, Elvira was such a totally different thing, than what Vampira is doing. Sure, they have a similar look, but that whole campy, like, cheerleader chick vibe thing mixed with the goth. I mean, they're two different entities.
It's a goth Valley girl is what
yeah, exactly. The Valley girl, not cheerleader. Valley.
Damn.
Yeah.
I cannot wait until my August pick. It's going to be Elvira, Mistress of the Dark. And I'm just thinking about all the lines I love so much. And I just
I just watched it like 2 nights ago, and I'm just sitting.
I might watch it this week and then watch it again for the show in like
3 weeks when we have to record.
Yeah, I might actually do it.
I can't wait to hear your all's take.
Well, we've done it at least twice before, so it's nothing new. So Logan, that Chaz Adams stuff, is Vampira actually a riff on Morticia? I don't know that. I didn't know that. I mean, like, it makes sense, but I didn't know that.
Yeah, she talked a little bit about that in the documentary. That was kind of, she was sort of pulling from that imagery, which I'm a huge fan of Chaz Adams. I've got a bunch of like the Drawn and Quarterlies.
Yeah, we have a bunch too.
Yeah, a bunch of the collected works. Love the Adams Family, especially the original. I remember, renting that book from the library, like The World of Chaz Adams, and then I bought it about a year or so ago. So I love.
You should start collecting Gorey books as well. Edward Gorey. Edward Gorey and Chaz.
Whole shelf. Yeah.
Okay.
I love
so you were probably one of the few people that I know that actually knows Edward Gorey by name. Megan and I.
I wish I could show you. I've got a wall of prints. I've got several Gorey things on the wall.
We're in a group chat. There's nothing stopping you after we're done.
There we go. I will.
I will show all.
That's where. Yeah, Logan. Logan is right. That is true.
Yes, honey, I know they're your books. She's like, I will show my books.
So we would be terrible if we didn't, before wrapping this up, mention at least the king of camp. Probably the person who definitely the person who introduced camp to me. I can't speak for everybody else, but we got to talk about John Waters for at least.
I was gonna say John Waters.
like just what a wild ride I've had with John Waters fandom.
Absolutely.
Because like I watched movies not knowing that they were John Waters movies. Like I had watched Pecker, I had watched Serial Mom.
Serial Mom.
But the first time I was like, oh, that's who John Waters was the second movie I ever got in the mail from Netflix was Pink Flamingos, because it had been something I'd heard about and I couldn't find it in any video stores. So like that was the first thing I added on my Netflix queue, was like any movie that I'd always wanted to rent but it could never find at a video store. And I remember I watched it. I was disgusted by it. I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. And when it was over, I ejected it and I put it in the envelope and I sealed it shut and I threw it back in the mailbox, and I was so pissed off. And like an hour later, I was like, man, I kind of want to watch it again. And I got in the car and I drove to Suncoast Pictures and just bought the DVD and watched it a second time. So I was like, that movie really, like, it just embeds in that brain and you cannot forget about it.
Yeah. Well, that is John Waters' director's eye, you know. It's like
he's like the top person I want to meet. Like if there's anyone,
I was going to ask if you've ever met him. Okay.
No, I've hung out with Mink Stole, which we did release that interview a couple months ago on the feed, and it is embarrassing because it's like baby Matt Kelly doing his first ever interview. But it was a very cool experience. I got to go to her house in Baltimore, and we set up a soundboard because she was releasing a jazz album of her singing old jazz standards. And we talked about like the jazz standards, and we talked about working on these John Waters movies. And it was just like a 15-20 minute interview. And then I started packing up the soundboard, and she's like, hey, do you want a cup of tea? And I was like, sure. And she like made a pot of tea and then poured me a cup, and then just like sat me down on the couch and started pulling out photo albums of like her on the set of Pink Flamingos and her on the set of Multiple Maniacs, and like all these crazy old photos from the 60s and 70s. And I ended up just hanging out for like an hour and a half, just listening to her tell me stories of what it was like shooting those movies in the 70s and getting arrested. And like, I really wish that I had the mic on to record that conversation, because it was such a more fascinating thing than what I actually got in our 20-minute interview. But Mink Stole was awesome. Just a solid.
Matt, did she also usher you into manhood?
Not.
Matt's still waiting for that, dude.
Hey, can you hear me? Sorry. I don't know.
But there's two of you now.
There we go.
I don't know what just happened. My computer was like, screw you, I'm doing updates. It already did an hour of updates before this. I'm so sorry.
I like this view better, actually.
This view is a little bit better.
Okay.
And
so I'm sorry I missed the last few seconds, but John Waters.
You were staring so straight faced, and I was like, man, he's not interested in this whole story at all.
He's like really into this.
So you did or did not hear the story that I hung out with Mink Stole in her apartment. It's all right. So Joe, how about you tell us a little bit about John Waters stuff?
So my introduction to John Waters actually was in a This American Life podcast from like 2009, where I forgot what the theme was, but they were talking about how John Waters was like pen pals and sort of besties with Leslie Van Houten of the Manson family, and how he was like and was like, you know, wrote to her for many years, and she wrote back and was went to go visit her and like tried for a long time to like get her parole on it. And so it was interesting because I was like, I've heard the name before, but I never heard him speak. I actually hadn't seen any of his films up until that point either. So it was interesting to like hear him talk so passionately about about a person and about his relationship with her. And then from then on, anytime like, you know, John Waters stuff would come up and I'm like, oh, that's the guy who's like friends with Leslie Van Houten. But even to this day, and like, so Joshua has actually shown me part of Female Trouble. I've not seen Pink Flamingos yet.
I don't think you will ever be emotionally prepared for it, Joe.
I don't think so either. From what I hear, I think I need to, you know, I definitely need to brace myself. But again, like I feel it's very interesting because like I'm not at all familiar with his like with his oeuvre, with his, you know, with his canon of films. So and I think like I've been kind of waiting for like there to be one day when I just like come over to Joshua's place and that's all we do is John Waters films, because like that's just what we usually do. And it's like, okay, today's the Hitchcock day, and I've been waiting for like that day, one day soon in the after time, Joshua.
Oh man, I hope it's when you know, since everything that I had scheduled for this year got pushed back to a whole nother year, can we just save that for when I stay at Joshua's house for a night before San Diego Comic-Con? Because I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, plans made.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Talk. Okay, I can't hear anything Matt's saying. I don't know what happened.
But only me?
So sad. This is so awesome, and I can't hear anything.
Someone ask him if it's only me.
Matt is saying, God.
Is it only Matt, Joshua?
It's only Matt.
It's only Matt. That's so frustrating. Anyways, I wanted to say that I have met John Waters before, and it was amazing. He's so funny and so weird and lovely. And I told him because my mother... John Waters was very queer, you know, and especially like growing up in Ohio, you know, you talk about John Waters, it's like, you know, that my mom was kind of upset that I was watching his movies, and she once had made a comment like that she would have preferred that I'd been watching like porn instead of John Waters movies. And I got to tell him that, and that was very entertaining because he's like, oh, okay. And then he signed my book and we went on our way, you know, but he's very fun. He's, you know, he's great live. Highly recommend his live show. Female Trouble is my favorite John Waters movies. Besides, like, you know, Hairspray and Serial Mom, which are a little more mainstream.
So since Joshua can't hear me, Scott, how about you ask Joshua if there's any final thoughts he has while we wrap it up?
So, Joshua, I am the interpreter. Any final thoughts before we wrap up for the night? That's what Matt asked me to ask you.
We're gonna work
on anything, everything.
Life, cosmos, sex, death, magic.
Where can people listen to the show?
No, you know, this has been a blast. This has been so much fun. You know, we adore you guys. You're one of the few podcasts that I almost like 90% of the time listen to the full opening credits, because your song is brilliant. Like, it's so perfect. It reminds me of those awesome like 80s heavy metal horror tunes, you know, that I rarely ever skip through your opening. It's only if I'm really excited about the movie that I'm like, oh, I want to hear it. Because
I hate to break it to you, because I literally skip through our opening all the time.
You know, and I think a lot of people probably do. I skip through all kinds of stuff, you know.
But I really appreciate that you understand and appreciate what I was going for all those years ago when I wrote the theme song.
It's so good, and those like high harmonies that you get in it, it's like, oh, that's so fun.
I like to go as over the top as possible. So where can we listen to Fright School? Tell us your website, tell us the podcast locations, Instagram, all that good business.
Yeah, everything is at Fright School. So you could find us on Instagram, Twitter, the Twitters, Facebook, all Fright School. We're hosted by Pinecast. So we do have a site for Pinecast. I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's like Fright School /Pinecast.com. I don't know.
Yeah, if you just search Fright School Podcast, you'll find it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're on the iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and Luminary and all of the things. We're on all of them.
We have a lot of fun, spooky, queer memes that we post on our Instagram and our Facebook. So
yes,
thank
you to R. Brian. R. Brian does an awesome job curating our Facebook.
All right. Well, I'm going to let Joshua bounce and give Joe the floor for just a little bit. So long, Joshua.
Bye, Joshua.
I was about to say, like, Joshua just got bounced without him knowing.
Joe, real quick before you go, obviously, Fright School is a thing, but we also work together on MFK Ultimate. So how about you tell us real quick about MFK Ultimate before we bounce?
Sure. So MFK Ultimate is the project that I do without Joshua. It's basically me and my good friend Delia, who is a wonderful writer in Las Vegas. We get together and we do a game of Marry, Fuck, Kill on like random, abstract concepts. So in a recent episode, we did Marry, Fuck, Kill Zoom web conferencing behaviors during the quarantine. So like, it's like judging people's backgrounds and not muting your mic and all this kind of stuff. So we have definitely we're still starting out. We're recording episodes all the time, and we would love to get any feedback as much as possible. So we are MFK Ultimate everywhere as well. Delia is in charge of our social media, which is the reason why there's nothing posted on the Instagram yet. She's never going to see this, so it's fine. I'm going to get a text tomorrow. But we would love it. And you can also listen to us anywhere podcasts are available. And you can also go to the Geekscape website and click our links there as well, too.
And we got to find a way to get you guys a Marry, Fuck, Kill live stream one of these nights. But
yes.
Thank you so much, Joe, for joining us so long. And then finally, Scott comes down to just the two of us.
Talk about myself?
No. Everyone knows you. Is there anything coming up in the next week for Scott that's worth mentioning?
Oh man, I'm just like chipping away as fast as possible on the next Console Crash EP. It won't be this week. It won't be next week. I'm assuming. So this is the end of May, third week of May, right? Yeah, it's the third week of May. I'm assuming in a month there will be a new Console Crash EP. I'm pretty close to being done writing it. Then I'll record it, and then it'll take a couple weeks for my producer to do his magic. But once that's done, then I'm going to start writing a Haunted Woods EP and 2 Haunted Woods EPs. So my goal in quarantine is to write as much music as possible before I have to get back to real life. When we all get back to real life, if we don't all drown in our own bodily fluids.
All right. And then finally, for me, obviously, I don't just do horror movie night. Today, we released an episode of my favorite episode on the pilot of Mad Men. I
gotta listen to that. I haven't checked my podcast app yet.
Tomorrow, Jonathan London from Geekscape is joining us on One Hit Thunder to talk about Tommy Shaw's only attempt at a solo hit with Girls with Guns, which is just a synth crazy mess. And then on Horror Movie Night, for those of you who are still hanging in that chat, we're going to be talking about Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Yeah, you don't get campier than that. So tune in on Thursday for the Buffy the Vampire episode, and then we'll be back on Tuesday with another episode of the Horror Movie Night live stream. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
See you next week.